So, welcome everyone. I'm really excited for today's conversation. Today, I'm joined by Scott Trumpolt, the founder of Trumpolt Compensation Design Solutions, where he helps organizations align pay strategy with performance, culture, and talent growth. With more than 30 years of experience in corporate HR and over a decade leading his own consultancy, Scott brings a deep real world perspective to how firms like win his clients and deliver sustained value. So thanks for joining us, Scott.
Thank you, Esteban. It's wonderful to be able to address your audience. Appreciate it very much.
Great. So let's get started. To start this episode, I would like to ask you a question about the evolution and the purpose of your consulting business. So you've spent decades on compensation strategy, from global HR leadership to building your own practice. And I was wondering what early experiences or insights led you to start your firm, and how has that foundational vision shaped the way you approach your practice today?
Well, it's a great question. And the reason that I got into consulting, as you mentioned, I had been in a global company and I'd worked overseas, and I'd been in corporate for about 18 years, 17, 18 years. But the reason why I decided to become an independent consultant is really because I wanted to spend all of my time designing compensation solutions and working with a variety of clients. Now, obviously, when you work in a corporate job in compensation, a lot of your time will be devoted to administrative paperwork and perhaps managing people or managing projects, and you don't have as much time to create. And so that need to be creative and that need to work with clients of all different industries where I could really apply my knowledge and experiences in a focused way was really the reason why I became a consultant independent, and I've never really looked back.
That's great. And I know your business emphasize on tailored market-based compensation solutions, that align also with culture and performance inside the businesses. So how do you translate the specialized value, into a compelling narrative for your clients, and also to attract the right clients in the times that we live in? Yeah.
Well, as far as aligning the type of solutions that I provide, I was certified as a compensation total rewards consultant. And so again, it's how do you apply that knowledge with different clients? And there's no better way. If you're going to be successful as a client, the first thing, more important than anything else, you have to really be a good listener. So I ask a series of questions of prospective clients to get an idea about their culture, their philosophy on pay. Is, for example, variable pay more important to them as an aspect of the market than base pay? They might want to not necessarily pay full competitive market for base pay solutions, but they want to go heavy on the variable side. So it's very much a rewards-based, performance-based meritocracy culture. So I ask a lot of those questions about their culture and their philosophy. And if they don't really have that ironed out, and sometimes they don't, they're not really sure how to respond to that. But again, I ask more types of probing questions to get a sense of what they really need in their organization. What are their goals that they have, and how do they want their employees to fit into those goals? So another aspect that as a consultant that I really wanted to dig into was the whole idea of employee engagement. Because employee engagement nowadays, for the newer generations of employees that are coming up, and you know this, they want to have more transparency, even in an area like compensation, which traditionally has been a really black box. It's been kept very secretive, not because of not because companies are necessarily trying to hide anything, but it's just they're worried about employee reactions and how that will impact employee engagement if employees find out that someone else is making more than them in a similar job. And yes, there's reasons for that, but the employee may not see it that way because, as you know, a lot of it is based on perception. But in the United States, and now around the world as well, there are various pay transparency laws about posting pay ranges that employees can see. And that has been a direct result, I believe, of the latest generation saying, hey, we want to feel more. It's not that they necessarily want to know what the other person is making. It's more about how do they fit into the organization and how do they grow within the organization, because career development,
Yeah.
what leads to greater pay. So you shouldn't be just focusing on the job you're doing today, but how are you going to be able to grow your career over time? And employees need to ask those questions of their managers, because the managers may not be experts on pay, but they are very knowledgeable about what the business needs are and what the next level of business needs. So how can we match the employee? I've kind of taken this question in a little bit different direction, but the idea is that employee engagement is so important. So as a dynamic, so what I'm really doing in my area is figuring out how do my solutions lock into this idea of employee engagement, because businesses are very interested in improving their employee engagement, because if they improve their employee engagement, it's been shown through various survey results that business results generally tend to get better. So
Yeah, absolutely.
this is the thing. It's a benefit to the employee, and it's also a benefit to the management team and the top leadership of the company that's ultimately responsible for the operational and financial performance of the company. So this has really been how I fit in to attracting new clients. And with that, the other piece of it that I really try and show is, look, things are changing in organizations and in companies, but the issues remain the same. The issues are the same issues that I've been dealing with for 30 years. It's just how do we present them now in the most effective way? That's what's different.
And could you share, a concrete, client example where your approach shifted fundamentally or changed a business trajectory, and what you did exactly to get them there?
Yeah. Well, one company approached me and they said, we did this employee opinion survey, and employee opinion surveys, depending upon how you do, you may know that you sometimes will see a company that says voted one of the best 100 companies to work for, and how do they get that certification? How do they get that award? And typically how they get that is because they have high employee engagement levels. They have done surveys and they have been able to do good in a lot of areas. But this one company, they did well on their employee engagement survey, except in the area of compensation. This was something that stood out to them in their survey results. And so I looked at the questions, the responses on the survey, and a lot of it had to do not directly with compensation. That was partly with compensation, but more about career development. Employees didn't feel like they had visibility and understanding about how they could grow their career. So some of them went to other companies to take that next step, but they may have wanted to prefer to stay at their existing company had they seen that career development opportunity. Absolutely, they want to grow their pay, but they know that to do that, they need to grow their skill sets. So what I did is I said, what we really need to do is make our career development pathway much more visible to employees through something called a career architecture, where employees can see that today I am an intermediate level cost accountant for the company. How do I become a senior level accountant? And what we did is we linked this career architecture mapping so that employees could see how they move up the organization. And then we also linked that to market-based pay, because in the marketplace, there is no such thing as just a cost accountant. There is a cost accountant, intermediate level, entry level, senior level, specialist, expert. How do you move from an individual contributor to a manager if that's what you want to do? So what we did over a few years was to implement this career architecture system, which became visible to employees. They could see it on the company intranet. They could ask their manager questions about how do I fit into that business model need and grow my pay and grow my career at the same time. And we highlighted some people within the organization. They may have moved vertically in the organization, or they may have moved laterally to obtain additional skills so they could then move up in the organization. And then we showed that progression. And when they did that same survey a few years later, they showed an uptick in the area of compensation, employee engagement. So there was an uptick in the employee engagement results. And when we looked at turnover, it had dropped, voluntary turnover, that is, had dropped some. So you can't say that it was all related to the kind of things we were doing through a job classification system and career development and linking it more directly to market-based pay. But on the other hand, all the signs were there. You had not a very good rating 2 years ago, and 2 years later, you had a better rating and lower turnover, which, as you know, is a big cost to a company. So that's just one example. Perhaps it's very hard to move the needle, but when you have a result like that, and I've had a few others like that, it depends on what the client needs. The client may not be that locked into employee engagement. A client may just ask me, look, we need to manage the market-based pay of our jobs better than we're doing right now. Can you build us a pay structure that is market-based, and we can prove that it's market-based, and we can make sure that we're not paying people too little or that we're too much based upon the level of contribution that they're making today, and then have it linked to a career development. So a lot of what I do build sales commissions and I do other things, but a lot of what I do is building these kind of career development pay structures that are linked to the market.
Yeah, and with the example that you shared, those are great results. That's great. And talking about compensation as a strategy more, and maybe a more deep question, but we know many firms struggle not just with competitive pay, but also there's the part of pay equity, job classification, and also incentive design. And based on your experience helping clients through those specific challenges, what's one common misconception that teams have about that whole compensation design when they come to you?
Well, I think the big misconception that they have is that these issues will all be taken care of by their existing compensation team. Remember that I worked in the compensation corporate world for a number of years. Yeah. And I think one of the misconceptions they have is that these type of pay equity issues that you talk about will all be solved internally. That's what the compensation team is there for, or that's what the human resources team is there for. But the reality is that the reason that I try and present my value proposition, if I had to crystallize my value proposition to business clients, I would say, look, you have a team of compensation professionals in your company, but keep in mind that these type of design projects, they don't have time for, because they're spending a lot of their time doing the day-to-day pay actions that are required. They're promoting people. They're making sure that those people are getting a proper promotional increase. They're focused on hiring people at the right pay rates and giving good recommendations to the company based on market. So they're doing everything right. But when it comes to internal equity, when they're focused on transactional issue after issue after issue that comes across their desk on a daily basis. Oftentimes you need someone from the outside to bring an objective viewpoint and to be able to look at all of the employees from an equity standpoint and see how all of them fit into this idea of equity analysis. And that is the kind of expertise I'm providing. It's an outside objective opinion, but it also is more strategic compensation that the internal company either doesn't have the resources to do that kind of level of work, or they do have that expertise, but they don't have the time to do it because they're so busy with the day-to-day tactical. As you know,
exactly.
Every company is looking to keep the number of employees to the absolute minimum of what they need, and people are stretched significantly. So a lot of my clients become my clients because they realize finally that for those kind of big, high-level strategic items to move forward, they're going to need some outside help. And that's where I come in.
Exactly. Everything cannot be done internally. That's where people like you and your expertise comes in. And we see this in many areas with businesses and different industries. Everything cannot be handled internally. There has to be someone that comes with a new perspective. It can look at the whole board in a different way.
Yeah.
I know also you've recently written a book, and one of your recent LinkedIn posts, you shared how it's gaining traction. The book is called The Defragmented Consulting and Consultants. And I was wondering how, how was the writing and sharing that intellectual property, and how has it influenced the way maybe clients discover you or approach you and your expertise?
Yeah. Well, it's fairly new. Let me just show it to the viewers really quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's the hard copy, which is out now. I decided, since it was selling, that I would get a hard copy done of it as well. And also, paperback seems to be the most popular, though. And so here's the paperback. Same thing, though. As to the it's also available as an ebook. I know some people like to be Kindle readers, and so that's another option. To your question, this is the first book that I wrote, and I wrote it mainly. I will answer the part about clients second, but I wrote it mainly not for business clients, because it is not a book specifically about my compensation expertise. It is about my journey and my experience and what I've learned by reaching back to the past and reshaping my past to be a more successful consultant. Because as a consultant, you need to, if you're an independent consultant like me, one person, you're servicing multiple clients. And so over the years, to make myself work faster and more efficiently, I kind of came up with a method of drawing from different experiences and being able to replicate what I do for one client for other clients in a more efficient fashion, so I can address as many client issues at once. So the book itself is, again, not about my compensation expertise. I'm doing that in a second book right now. But this book is more to entice people like myself who are thinking about becoming an independent consultant, but they need a little bit of a nudge. So I'm trying to give them a blueprint, a roadmap.
Yeah.
But to your part about your question about what about clients themselves, even though I don't talk specifically about being a compensation consultant, only a little bit do I do that, just to advance the story. But clients would see in this book very much how I react to client needs, how I approach the client relationship process, and how I feed off of my prior experiences and have refined them and defragmented them, if you will, like a computer does, into a way that makes me more effective and more efficient. So even though the book was written primarily for that vast population out there who are thinking about becoming a consultant and they want to know how to sustain your consultancy career like I have for 13 years, that will address that in the book. But as far as potential clients, they would get a very strong insight into, if they had an engagement with me, what it would look like. They can visualize it. They can feel it through the book about why I'm passionate about what I do and how I approach the client engagement. So in that sense, it could be valuable for a potential client to read.
I like that. I like that because, in a world where we see a lot of a loss of trust, between the people and the businesses, I think showing that authenticity through your career, through how you've uh, managed clients through your whole career, I think it is great to see that. Not only on being on social media and posting everything that is perfect, but being authentic and showing everything in a roadmap for people that are trying to
Yeah.
emulate that and starting the business. I think it's very great.
Yeah, they
And
can identify with their own situation, because I have some personal chapters in there about things that I've gone through in my corporate career that I'm sure they can identify with and help to make a connection, because there's plenty of work out there for everybody.
Yeah, that is true. And talking about that, and the future of consulting, what's looking ahead, what's one major trend you see that maybe is reshaping how management consultants are working, especially niche experts, in an area where we're seeing automation, AI tools pop up and it's the hot topic right now.
Yeah.
To you, what's one major trend that you see is reshaping the
Well, you actually mentioned AI, and that certainly is, but I think it's although there are some concerns out there about I think it's a good thing because I'm already using it, for example, in my website, because in a small way I'm using AI because I can't be out on my website all the time, but as questions come in, basic questions can be answered by AI, which is very helpful. I think if it's done right, it can be very professional. Up until a few years ago, I was really relying on word of mouth and the fact that I had two ways to get clients. One way was the fact that I had built up quite a long experience working in the corporate world, and when those people went off to other companies and they found out that I was now being an independent consultant, they would reach out to me. And the second source of clients was when I worked in those environments, I would meet new people who I would work with on that project that I hadn't known before. They got to know me and they got to understand my approach and how I process things. And when they went to a new company, they became a new client. And that really sustained me for 11 or 12 years. But now I notice that more and more that it's really important to make yourself visible. Transparency is not just for employees. Transparency is for us consultants out there, especially if we're in a niche area like I am, that it is not as well known. You need to get out there. You need to do podcasts to talk about your experiences, such as we're doing today. You need to write articles. That's the big change, is when for the first 10 years of my independent consultant, I did literally nothing as far as promotion. I had a website, but it wasn't a website that was attuned properly and streamlined to what today's audiences are looking for. So about 2 years ago, I redesigned my website. I started putting out a lot of media on that. So to doing a podcast, to writing some articles, to be featured in a few magazines, to writing a book, which is also available on my website. So the biggest change that I can see for niche consultants is that you have to spend a good chunk of your time assisting clients and closing new clients. But another part of it is really promoting and advertising what you do and how it can be of value to others. That's a big part of the independent consultant job, which I didn't see, and it certainly wasn't relevant for me 3 years ago. And of course, with AI, again, leaning into it and using it where it makes sense to support your business. Those are the biggest changes that I've seen.
Absolutely. And I agree. Everything is changing and very fast. I think that the changes are happening way faster than before. So when we talk about the dot-com bubble or even the computers, it took a long time, but now, in a matter of a year or two, whole industries are reshaped and everything is moving so fast. So businesses and people have to keep it up, have to, like you said, build trust, put out content and use new strategies and new tools to stay relevant.
Yeah, and one other thing I like to add in there is that some people will say to me, "Well, you're a very data-driven consultant. You look at market data analysis, and a lot of that can be done by AI. Aren't you worried about being snuffed out by AI?" And my response to that is that, at least as far as I can see, I think there still needs to be a human connection at the end of the day. And I think people value that. It might be different in another 10 years, but for right now, I still see that a human connection is very important. And that's something that AI hasn't really been able to deliver on yet in my specific area, but we'll see what the future holds. But I still think a human connection is very important. And that's the other reason why people like to work with me. One of the things is there are people that do what I do and they're part of a large organization. And what happens is when they get a contract with a corporate office, there are 5 or 6 different people that are working on that project, and there's a lot of redundancies. I find that a lot of my clients want to work with one person, me. That's it. they want to have direct linkage to me and not having to work with 5 or 6 different team members and having to reshuffle the deck every now and then. They just want that kind of direct, customized feeling. And so that's another thing that separates me from the pack.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, we'll see where we're at in 10 years.
Yeah.
But I personally hope that human connection stays and that we don't get to a point where AI is able to emulate that perfectly and that people adopt it. But we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see. Exactly. I mean, neither of us control the future. All we can do is control how we respond to it. And, and I mean, that's the only part of it that we can control is our response, our reaction, and trying to find ways where we can coexist with it and make it beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe a last question to wrap this up. I would like to ask you, what's next for? Well, you've a little bit answered the question already, but what's next for your business? What's next for you? What are you focusing on for the next 12 to 24 months?
Right. Obviously, my clients is always the most important, and it always will be priority to me. I have some clients that have been with me 5, 6, 7, 8 years. They literally keep me on. I'm not someone I can be, and I do have projects that come and go. I just finished a project, and it was only like a few weeks or a few months engagement. I have clients like those, but some of them have used for me because they want that outside perspective, and they keep me on for an extended period of time. But there are some new projects that I plan on launching this year, a little bit later. It gets kind of crazy around December, January when people are transitioning over. But the biggest goal on the promotion side is improving my Google ranking as a compensation consultant. But the most important thing is my website is really streamlined now, and I get a lot of traffic, but not necessarily people going all the way to the end and clicking on me to have a meeting about my services. There are some that have, but oftentimes people that are clicking don't have the authority to necessarily engage on my services. So I'm working hard to increase the number of people that have that kind of authority to click on my resources, because everything's out there, and continuing to add media. And I want to finish my second book, which is my first book really about compensation, because it's focused on a really hot topic.
Yeah, and as you said, it's very niche, trying to be the biggest expert on it. And I think writing a book will help you a lot, that's for sure. Well, I thank you very much for all the insights that you've shared. I'm pretty sure the audience will have seen a lot of value in it. Hope they go take a look at the book. And thanks again for being part of this episode.
Oh, it's been great, Esteban. I really enjoyed it, and enjoyed your questions, and enjoyed talking to you.